Yeah. Well, I don't think it seems like it's a continued narrative that you've had about Lincoln Riley being afraid. There was people talking about that Lincoln Riley's afraid. The reason why he didn't go to LSU is because he's afraid to enter the SEC. This narrative they just keep continuing. I think this one just goes into it. I don't doubt, though, that there were some concerns at USC looking at the schedule, looking at going to the Big Ten and what might happen in the Big Ten. As you're seeing, USC will be playing Wisconsin, at home, Penn State at home, traveling to Michigan, and then we always have the game every year against Notre Dame. Adding the game against LSU made a very tough schedule for USC to get through in the season. I'm not saying it can't be done, but I can see there could have been concerns. My question is how much of it was overplayed and how much of it, in the article, it just the way the wording of the article is where I have the issue. It's not beyond the realm possibility that at some point 2 years ago, Lincoln Riley looked at his roster, looked at the situation and said, wow, 2 years from now, we're going to be ready to play. And he might have talked about it. My problem with the article is we're to believe this site and unnamed sources that this happened. And so it just seems a little bit, I don't know. It would have been nice if at least one person could have confirmed this besides the author of the article. But, it is what it is. And people are going to believe what they want to believe. There's some people that are always going to hate Lincoln Riley. They're going to take shots and say, oh, look, he was too afraid of the SEC. That's no wonder he didn't want to play LSU. I mean, it's just a little bit convenient that it kind of goes through the same narrative. And let's face it, right now, this is the hardest time. And don't get me wrong, after this weekend, USC has a big recruiting weekend and recruiting is opening up again. There's going to be a lot of news. For the last couple of weeks, it's been a really slowed down cycle. And one of the great ways to get some clicks is to take shots at Lincoln Riley. And I think that's what partially this could have been.
Yeah, I think people that are taking shots at Coach Riley, they're honestly just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and they think, one bad year automatically makes a coach horrible. And obviously, anybody that's really thinking that Coach Riley is not a good coach, they obviously do not watch college football whatsoever.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that he is a good coach. It's funny if you say that because I've been listening to, I think the guys over at Cover 3 a lot. I can't remember if it was Bud Elliott. I think it was Bud Elliott. And he basically had Lincoln Riley. I think he was not even in his top 30 coaches. I mean, that was a bit absurd. But most people have him somewhere snugly between, in the top 10, maybe just out of the top 10. But there is this narrative that he has one bad season. The guy's all he's done really is win double digits every year. Number of conference championships when he was with Oklahoma and been in the playoffs. Had trips to the playoffs. And people are forgetting all those things and just looking at what he walked into at USC. Us USC fans know the state of the roster and the situation. And he, Lincoln Riley said it himself that maybe he'd done himself a disservice by having that really great year 2 years ago. That team outperformed. And in football, sometimes the ball bounces the right way. You pick up one or two wins. Last year, the ball bounced the wrong way and they picked up one or two more losses. So it's going to be interesting to see. He's going to have a hell of a schedule. And that's what this whole article was about. USC facing a pretty darn difficult schedule. And what got to be one of the more difficult, if not the most difficult, out-of-conference schedule in the country this year, facing Notre Dame and LSU. So it'll be interesting to see if more comes out of this. I don't know if this is just, again, something for clickbait. Maybe at some point, maybe Lincoln Riley made the comment or someone did reach out saying, hey, can we reschedule this or get rid of it? And then this guy's turning it into where USC's been desperately, the way it's worded is it makes it seem like USC's been desperate for 2 years to get out of it. And I'm finding that's probably a little hard to believe.
Yeah, because once again, all those people that believe that USC wanted to back out of this game, they obviously have not looked at the past non-conference seasons of the past 20 years.
Hey, Tim, it's Adam calling from Georgia. How's it going?
Good, Adam. How are you?
All right, great to talk to you. I just had a couple of brief points. I mean, first, look, Riley is a very, very good coach. I think one of his weaknesses was exposed, namely his failure to focus on defense enough, but he's fixed that. We have a great defensive coordinator, and I think we need to give him an opportunity. I don't think he's afraid of playing LSU. I just think he's realistic when he's looking at the schedule and he's looking at the roster. Because, you know what, it really is unfair. Look at Ohio State's schedule where they play 8 home games. compared to our schedule. It's unfair to Florida when you consider Florida's schedule compared to, say, Ohio State's. So I understand where he's coming from, if in fact it's true. But the good news, I think, is that, look, if you look at last year, our offense averaged, 41.8 points a game. If we suffered a 25% reduction in offensive output this year, we'd still be averaging 31 a game. Now, our defense last year gave up 34.3 a game. If they improved by only 20% in points per game, they'd only be giving up 27 a game. So I still think there's reason to be optimistic because the improvement that we need is relatively slight. But the schedule strength, particularly the disparity with other schools, is problematic. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
No, I think you're right on. And I think that this whole thing, I don't think Lincoln Riley looked at LSU and said, whoa, I don't want that game. I think he looked at the overall. Yeah. I think he looked at the overall picture of what USC usually plays in a given season, whether it's the Pac-12 or the Big Ten. I mean, look at USC's schedule last year with Washington and Oregon on the schedule, right? Throw in an LSU and Notre Dame, and right. You look at the same thing we're looking at this year, playing Penn State and Michigan and Wisconsin. You know, so it's not like joining the Big Ten was the issue. It's not, this had nothing to do with Lincoln Riley and Jennifer Cohn. This game was set up before Riley got there by Bone and Helton. And I'll tell you this, what's with that? One of the biggest things about the previous administration that drove me crazy is what on earth were we doing scheduling teams like Alabama and scheduling teams like now LSU, we have Ole Miss next year, not knowing, especially the way we had played. I mean, I know USC has a history of playing. Again, they've never ducked away from teams, and I'm not saying SC should start ducking away from them. But in the current climate of the playoffs, you can lose 1-2 games and get into the playoffs. So, what is the purpose? Why on earth are you going to put teams like, USC playing LSU and Notre Dame the same season, and then playing a full Big Ten schedule? It absolutely makes no sense. And if you look around the SEC or the Big Ten, no one else is doing stupid stuff like that. And USC really needs to figure it out because, setting yourself up to fail like that, you're going to have those seasons where everything's going to come together and you're going to run through them. You have a strong team, and you can beat anybody. But it's not about the individual matchups. Yeah. It's the body blows you take playing 4 really top teams in a season where the injuries are going to rack up. And if you haven't built up your roster, especially on both lines, that's going to become an issue. And so, I guess we can thank Clay Helton for one more thing out the door. It was setting up this year's schedule. Huh.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And it's like, look, we're expanding to a 12-team playoff to include more teams. But if at the same time there's this disparity in schedule strength such that we have our schedule, Florida has their schedule, then Ohio State has a cupcake schedule, well, that's not fair to us. And I think, though, based on the fact that our offense could suffer a 25% reduction in output. And if our defense just allows 20% points per game, we're still averaging 31 on offense and giving up 27 on defense. So my point is, there's reason to still be optimistic because Riley is a very good coach. We still have a good roster, and I think that's kind of how I feel about it. But thanks for taking my call, and good talking to you as always.
Always, Adam. Thank you so much for putting it with me. I'm sorry Matt could have been here to add a little more to the show, but appreciate your support always. And we'll talk to you next week. Fight on.
Hey, Tim, it's Dave from Iowa. All right, I'll make it quick because I know you got a lot of calls. So the reason why, USC and these other schools do these big-time non-conference matchups is because you get a major payday. I just looked it up. We're going to get $5 million playing LSU. For the other non-conference games, how much are we going to be getting? If anything, we're going to be paying those BFUs, so to speak. So that's what it is. In the end, and at the end of the day, it's a business, and hey, we need to make money somehow. I mean, it kind of goes to this point, in terms of like, it just goes to that point. I mean, hey, this is how you make money, and what fans can call it a sacrifice and no faith or whatever, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. What do you think?
Well, okay. So a couple things. One, USC doesn't need money that bad that they're going to put themselves in a competitive disadvantage. You have to admit, I agree with you, $5 million, but what's $5 million in the budget? It's not really, it's not like it would be as important.
It's a defensive coordinator. It's a defensive coordinator salary.
in the grand scheme of things, what's the percentage of the entire budget is my point, Dave. And I agree, 5 million, no matter what, is a big chunk of change. But to put your program and a beginning and building of a program in a situation where you're light up front, but apparently the story is he's been trying to dodge it for 2. By the way, I'm not giving this thing credence at all. I'm saying it's not outside the realm possibility that it was explored that maybe that the USC wasn't ready. The new administration comes in and said, we don't want this game. Let's try to get rid of it. What I'm addressing in the article is the fact that they're making it seem like USC's on their hands and knees doing whatever they can to get out of this game. And I don't think it's that extreme. That's my only point on that. I think that you do want to take a paycheck here and there. I mean, no one's going to turn away $5 million, but you have to look big picture as well. And if they keep lining up, their schedule. Now, let's face it. This year they play Michigan on the road and they have Penn State. But they're missing teams like Oregon. They're missing Ohio State, and the game, they have won the really tough road game. It's going to be that Michigan game. I know they travel to Minnesota. I know they travel to Maryland as well. But these games aren't going to be the caliber of games you're going to have. USC needs to look and strategically schedule. Look at you look no farther. Who's been dominating forever? The SEC. They don't schedule like this, and they do it for a reason. And they only play 8. They only play 8 conference games. USC plays 9 conference games in the Big Ten. They'll be traveling every other year back and forth to South Bend, as well as traveling to road games in the Big Ten footprint. USC needs to figure out how to schedule properly, and I do believe they will going forward.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I got two things to say, Tim. First of all, you're partially wrong because Georgia did play Clemson first week of the season, I believe, 2 years ago.
Okay, that's one game. Wait. Hey, don't talk over me, bud. It's my show. Really quickly, you just gave me one example of one team playing one team. That's not exactly telling me that I'm wrong, but go ahead.
Well, okay. Sorry. Okay. Well, and do you want more teams? What about Auburn and Oregon?
Let me say this to you.
Week 1.
Let me say this to you. I didn't say they never play. Do you understand that as well, Dave? I'm saying they don't make it a habit to do this. I've seen teams doing it more often in the SEC of recent, but they're still only playing 8 conference games. And they're doing it now probably more often because there is a 12-team playoff now. I'm talking about when there was a 4-team playoff. Why they did it? To protect their wins and to pad their stats, to pad their resume. That's why they did it. Not by going out and did these challenging games and going through a challenging schedule.
Okay. All right. That's fair. One last thing, Tim. In today's world, kids want to be on TV, national televised games. Do kids want to be in the big spotlight in the beginning of the season in Vegas or hosting a Utah State at a poor time stamp?
I don't know. What school do you know in all of, and go through your whole, you like to talk about the SEC, go through the SEC that doesn't have at least one Utah State on their schedule. You can't play.
Wait, sorry, what was that?
So you brought up the Utah State game, right? And I'm saying that every program in America has those cupcake games. It's not like USC. The problem is the opposite with USC. They have one cupcake game and 2 incredibly difficult games that are non-conference that most schools don't do. You named the Georgia playing Clemson, but who else did they play out of conference in that? I mean, did they play Georgia Tech? Oh wow, that's amazing. I mean, they're not putting the kind of schedule up that USC often does. Look again next year. USC will be playing Ole Miss and LSU. And Notre Dame in the same season, as well as their conference schedule in the Big Ten. I'm not saying put a bunch of pansies up there, but you have Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is your marquee game. And it's not like this isn't the Ty Willingham Notre Dame. This has been a Notre Dame program that's been the top 15, top 20 pretty much for the past 10 years. So, you have that tough game every year, and you're going to have your conference tough games. You don't need to add another tough game. That's my point.
All good, Tim. All good. And thank you for that PSA. We'll be here at 7. I'll make it quick. Look, I'm not mad at Lincoln. Coach LFR, we're trying to get out of the game. It was definitely, there's some truth to that. I read an article, ABC was like, no way. There's too much money on the table. You're not going anywhere. And I can certainly see with us going to the Big Ten why Lincoln would make that push. With that being said, and I'll wrap it up here, we're about to dog stomp, mollywop, curb stomp LSU, okay? We're about to smack them boys all across the field, best believe, and I'll take your response off the air. Thank you, Tim. Love you, brother.
Yeah, love you too, Keith. Thanks for calling in, man. Yeah, I don't think there's a game on the schedule that USC can't win. I don't think that's the situation whatsoever. Caller, hang on one second. That's not the situation at all. USC could beat anybody on the schedule. The issue is going to be is what is the depth situation during the season, and can USC, with issues and the defense as a whole has gotten insanely better. The secondary, the cornerback play. Wait till you see this secondary. It's going to be completely different than what we saw last year when guys couldn't even get lined up. They were broken. They're misassignments all over the field. Guys running wide open in the secondary. That's been cleaned up. Issues I have is, and just because I'm not going to put out there in the universe, but we've had issues staying healthy at linebacker. That's been a thing that's kind of plagued USC for a little while now. We can stay healthy at linebacker, and this defensive line they cobbled together. I think that USC can beat anybody on their schedule. My concern is again that depth piece, and because we don't have that depth, will guys be getting extra reps throughout the season that begin to take their toll later in the season?
Oh, I was want to say I think this whole thing is perfect for USC and their team. This whole thing of everyone, because everyone has spin a narrative on USC is scared of LSU, the program is scared, and all the SEC guys they've flipped the switch and they turn the narrative to make it seem like USC is scared. In my mind, I think this is perfect for the team because now until the first game, all they're going to hear all summer during training camp is that they're scared of LSU. Why are they trying to opt out of the game? LSU, are you really scared of LSU? Are you trying to run from LSU? They're probably going to interview the players, ask them why they're scared of LSU. Leading up to that game, they're probably going to start doing it again. So I really think that is a big motivation factor for the team. And I think just because of that, I don't think they're going to beat LSU now. And that's why I think Brian Kelly is probably really mad that actually came out because all summer they're going to hear it. USC is scared of LSU. Well, I think that's perfect bulletin board material.
Yeah, very well could be. I mean, what I would say also is I think they're less than a touchdown favorite. And that sure, yes, we lose Caleb, but they lose Jade Daniels. I mean, there's a lot to go in this game. There's a lot of uncertainty in this game. And like I said earlier, I don't know if you caught it or not, but there's nobody on this schedule at USC can't be. It's not like you look at anybody on the schedule and go, oh, well, that's a loss. It's just not out there at this point. Again, it's going to be, can USC stay healthy for the duration, especially in key positions along the defensive line and offensive line. It could go sideways very quick. We do not have depth on our lines. It can go sideways really quick with a couple of key losses. But barring that, injuries are part of football. Barring that, I'm with you. I think that USC absolutely. If Miller plays the way we saw him in the Holiday Bowl, we know what we have at wide receiver. We brought in just talent all the way across the defense and the defensive coaching staff that's going to be superior to most of the teams we're going to play. I really cannot wait to see what Danton Lynn does with these pieces. Who knows? We're all worried about the middle of the defense. Maybe that will be mitigated. That's what that's why you have defensive coordinators to sort those things out for us. It's going to be interesting to see how USC plays LSU in Las Vegas. Again, as we wrap the show up, I think and put a bow on it. The LSU situation. I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that someone at USC at some point reached out to LSU and said, "Hey, maybe let's not have this game." That's possible. But what I am pretty sure about is, and until someone corroborates it, is the fact that USC, as the article tried to make it sound, hasn't been trying desperately. The words they used to get out of this game for 2 years. I find that very, very unlikely.
I agree with everything you said, and I don't blame them if it did happen for them trying to get out of the game because they probably saw the new Big Ten schedule. And it's like why does USC have to play the hardest schedule in the nation when all those guys down in the SEC and other schools are playing cupcakes 4 times a year? They'll have 2 or 3 hard teams, and then they have the conference schedule and about 5 cupcakes. So it's like, and they go to the playoffs. Why does USC have to have the hardest schedule? So I wouldn't blame them for trying to move the LSU game, but if they did, it wasn't because they're scared of them. And that's why I just think by this coming out and the players hearing that they're scared all summer long is going to be an extra motivation factor, especially because I've rewatched that Miller Moss game against everyone said it's just one game, but I've rewatched it over the course of this year since we've had time, and like that guy has an it factor. Like I've seen, it's just like you watch all the quarterbacks you think are like this is probably one good game, but just how he controlled the pocket, how he controlled Lincoln Riley's scheme, how he was avoiding a rush and just throwing on a run. He has the NFL potential. He just has that factor. You can tell in his eyes he just wants to compete.
Yeah. And again, I think every program in America should have one really tough top name out of conference game. You should do it. What you shouldn't do is have 2 out of conference tough games. USC playing Notre Dame, that's awesome. USC playing LSU, that's gonna be great. I'm gonna be at that game for sure at Allegiant. But playing both of those in the same season and then playing a 9-game conference schedule in the Big Ten it's not just even about win or loss or your probability of winning those 2 games. USC could win both of those games, but what will the toll be again throughout the season? So they play these games, and then let's say they have a good season, then they would have to play a conference championship game against, I don't know, Ohio State or Michigan or Oregon, and then go, if they got into the playoffs, then they got to play, into the playoffs. And most teams are going to have those, but what they don't have is like in the SEC, they might have 1 game and 3 cupcakes and 1 cupcake game in the middle of November. Or if you're in the Big Ten, there's a number of Big Ten schools. Take a look at some of those all out of conference schedules for Big Ten teams and tell me they look anything like what USC is doing. I'm saying I just want it to be kind of an even keel across the board. And it looks like USC put themselves in a hole. And then, no one made them take that game. I'm glad that the people that did that are no longer here. But it's not like USC, 1, doesn't have a good point, and then 2, they have not been begging for 2 years to get out of this thing. But speaking of begging to get out of here, thank you, Dan, so much for calling in. I'm going to get out of here. Mm-hmm. Appreciate it. Hopefully you call back your second call.
I would say my last thing would say, I would say my last thing is just USC just needs to win games. You win games, just like in every sport. Winning cures all. Recruiting, all this negativity, all this negative talk, all this craziness. Just win games. If they win, these people go away because they won't have nothing to say. They have to find another team to jump on.
That's right. Yeah, great point. Yeah, winning will fix everything. That's the last piece of this thing. USC has been talking about development. I do think they have the coaches for that development. That's in place. USC's NIL is getting better. They have that piece together. Next thing will be is just proof of concept, getting out there on the field and showing the country that USC is going to get back to its winning ways. A lot of people always talk about Reggie Bush. A lot of people always talk about Carson Palmer. Everyone talks about the offenses and Lendale White. What they don't talk about is why we won all those games. Had a hell of a lot to do with those amazing defenses that Pete Carroll put together. And the USC going back to Robinson and all the way back to John McKay. USC's great teams were built on defense as well. And you can't win national championships without a national championship caliber defense. I think that USC is on a way to doing that.